We've created a thin place to welcome wisdom. Our beautiful poet, our prophetic, powerful poet, is known as Shalane Harkin, but I call her Hagia Sophia. My sister, wisdom.
Anyone? I was going to say this retreat's it's getting to me. It's working. It's really working on my heart. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to keep my words lean this time. Let me just read a couple of poems. This is called We Are the Myth Makers. We are the myth makers, our lives are pens, writing with our movements, our steps, our actions, every touch, the stories we're hoping to record into the world. What are the styles of relating we hope to inscribe? What is the tone of our presence here as we walk this soft earth? Women, what stories would we like to tell about ourselves, about our sisterhood, about our strength? Men, what stories would you like to tell about gentleness and power coexisting, about the great courage it takes to love? Humanity, what stories do we want to tell about the grand journey to finally opening our hearts to each other? Darling, it's time to put our heads together and consider how beautiful dare we make this world. Thank you all so much. Read one more. This is called Stubborn Resistance. It's okay if you're scared when you're opening. The seed, she was scared too. Do you think the coal wanted to become a diamond? Ha! She was scared out of her wits of change. It took her 10,000 years to even be able to pray for it. And what about our favorite cliche, the caterpillar? You must have heard his shrieks of resistance as some bigger force unwelcomely impelled it to eat its own form while disclosing nothing of those secret wings. The acorn was so stodgy, 100% closed in by the hard walls of its staunch beliefs. My, oh my, did he resist becoming the regal, generous oak. The only thing different in us from them is we have an even more stubborn resistance. But ultimately, we are impelled by the same irresistible force to completely self-destruct into a new and improved, yet to be discovered marvel. Do your best to allow for this. You too were made for wings.
Breathe that in for a moment. You probably already know the Hebrew word for breath. Ruach. Ruach. Vocalize that. Ruach. Same word for wind, spirit, air. Ruach. And in the Greek, pneuma, breath, spirit, wind, air. Air is our philosopher, our teacher. Thank you for that frame, Doug. I really appreciate it. What can we learn from air, especially in these liminal spaces that we're all crossing or straddling here in this place as individuals and as a planet? We're on thresholds of change. We need the teacher of breath and spirit and air to hold us on these thresholds, especially on these thresholds, because thresholds, liminal places, are dangerous places. So we need to breathe into them. The first breath we take, when we come into this world, sends us on this journey. How did you frame it? The journey of becoming. The journey of our annihilation, destruction? Was that it? Can you capture that one? Yeah. We are compelled by the same irresistible force to completely self-destruct. Wow. What wisdom through thresholds. And the first threshold we cross is the threshold between the constricting, stifling, deadly air of the story of separation, where we can't even breathe. And the wind comes and propels us from that story into the field of creation, the field of practice, so we can breathe. But at that threshold, we must pause to catch our breath. And the breath I want to invoke at this threshold goes like this. Breathing in, I love you. Breathing out, I love you. Breathing in, I love you. Breathing out, I love you. You know, I want to speak of breath and air and wind metaphorically, but I also want to evoke the reality that the air, the wind is a being. It's a teacher for us. It has gifts to share with us, wisdom to depart. Have you ever heard of the Canadian environmentalist and philosopher David Suzuki? You guys should check him out, man. I recently came across a podcast that he did that he was talking about the elements. Oh, I got to listen to this, right? Let me just share just a couple paragraphs from this talk about wind or air. David Suzuki says there are 300 million air sacs called alveoli in the lungs. And these give approximately 140 meter surface area for the exchange of gases. The alveoli are responsible for the spongy nature in our lungs. And if we flatten those 300 to 400 million alveoli out, they would take the size of a tennis court. And then surfactant is a mixture of fat and proteins made in the lungs. Surfactant coats the alveoli, the air sacs in the lungs where oxygen, the gift of the trees, enters the body. This prevents the alveoli from sticking together when you exhale, when you breathe out. And CO2 rushes out while the O2, the oxygen, fuses with the red blood cells, and every heartbeat sends oxygen to the body. Here. Now, you can't draw a line and say air ends here and I begin there. We are air. Brothers, we are air. And I am air, and I am you. The air that I breathe, you breathe. We are air, and when I breathe out, this is David Suzuki's words, we are air, and when I breathe out, the air that comes out of my nose quickly mixes and goes straight up your nose. And if I am air and you are air, then I am you. And we're embedded in the matrix of air. not just with all other human beings in the world, but with the worms and the snakes and the spiders and the birds and the trees. We are air. There is no boundary between us. So the first breath is a cleansing breath. I love you. I love you. Jim Finley says, if the divine were to withhold divine breath from us, ruach, that first breathed into Adam to give life, we would disappear. So the medicine to break the spell, the stifling, stale air of separation, is the medicine of breath and love. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Because of the spell of separation and the stifling, deadly air of separation, there is so much loneliness. Have you been following some of the media recently about the loneliness epidemic and how men have such a hard time making friends? It's because of this damn spell of separation. And we need here and in our practice to dissolve that spell and conjure up potions and medicine that spell can be dispelled. We are air. I am air. You are air. I am you. You are me. There is no separation, brothers. But I want to say to you today, it's not your fault. It's not your fault being caught up in this spell. It's so embedded in our culture, in our formation, in our lives, that we can almost not help ourselves to be mechanically mesmerized by this spell of separation. And it's hardwired into our nervous system, this myth and this spell. So stop with the shame. You know, in Buddhism, they talk about the two arrows. The first arrow is that stuff that happens to us just because we live on this planet and we're human, and you can't avoid that pain that comes. So that's the first arrow. But the second arrow is what we do to us. And we can stop that. So stop it. Stop it. Did you know, I just learned this like last week or something, that the word nirvana means to extinguish the flame. What? Nirvana, enlightenment, means to extinguish the flame. What flame? The flame of ego. The flame that keeps us, the ego that keeps us mechanically spellbound in this myth of separation. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said that blessing and air and love is a blessing that we receive, demands to be passed on. It's the visible proximity of the divine that demands, that wants to be passed on. So when we breathe in, we take in love, we take in air, and when we breathe out, we pass it on. And that can become the rhythm of our lives, taking it in and passing it on. On these threshold points, these liminal places, it's a threshing floor. And what happens there is the wheat is threshed on the threshing floor, beat on the threshing floor, until the heart of the matter, which is love, is revealed, and the chaff is blown away by the... The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You have to ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the threshold. Don't go back to sleep. The door is wide and open. Don't go back to sleep. Says Rumi. Don't go back to sleep. So brothers, I want us to practice for a moment this first cleansing breath on this first threshold, moving from separation into the generative field. I love you. I love you. So just breathe that for a few moments. Breathing in the energy of love and breathing, sending out the energy of love. The reciprocation of love, brothers. And when we sense that we are breathing in love and exhaling love, we can sense the chaff of separation beginning to blow away. So I would like you to turn to a brother next to you, to pause for just 30 seconds first. What are some of the things, the practices, the thoughts of thinking that are like chaff, that need to be blown away, that keep you in this separation? What are the actions, thoughts that are like chaff that can be expelled with love? Pause for about 15 seconds to let that surface. Then turn to a brother. This is not a conversation. This is just speaking 2 or 3 words, maybe 30 seconds each. What chaff of separation does the wind want to expel? I'll sound my singing bell when I invite you to turn to a brother. So if the first breath that carries us energetically across the threshold of blessing, knowing you are loved and worthy to open up to something new, I love you, I love you. The second breath I'm calling the breath of consenting. So we know we're loved, we know we're worthy. We begin or continue on this journey of transformation. And then we come to an impasse. And it seems like all of our practices, all of our resources, all of our best intentions aren't able to carry us across that threshold into the mystery. We don't know what to do. Our psychological resources, our spiritual resources seem insufficient. Well, we could practice spiritual bypassing and kind of ignore that impasse and just try to move right into doing something. Or we can consent and surrender to the mystery. It's time to invoke Howard Thurman again. Thank you, Glenn, for beginning that. Howard Thurman was preaching at Boston College in the chapel, and he said this: there is in every person an inward sea. And on that sea, there is an island. And standing before that island, on that island, there's an altar. And standing before that altar is the angel with the flaming sword. Nothing gets by the angel with the flaming sword without the inner area of your consent. Nothing gets by the angel with the flaming sword to be placed on that altar, on that island, on that sea, without your consent stamped upon your brow. And so this, brothers, is the breath of surrender, of letting go. And it's a yes. It's saying yes. It has the energy of yes. And so this breath, the consenting breath, is a simple breath, breathing in, yes. Exhaling, yes. Feel the reciprocity of receiving that yes and responding with a surrender, yes. So practice that breath for a few moments, brothers. Breathing in, yes. Letting go, yes. I would like us to now invite us to consider somatically in our bodies. You know, the wisdom is that the issues are in the tissues, right, brothers? So our body holds the wisdom. So I'd like you to stand with me for a moment. And imagining in your mind and in your heart and your body the energy of yes, the energy of consent. What shape would your body take to consent to the ruach, to the pneuma, to the wind that would carry us into the mystery of the divine? What shape would your body take, brothers, to yield, to consent to the wind? Go ahead and take that shape. Imagine that yes of the divine coming to you and you responding, yes, like a sail, tuned to the wind. Feel that in your body, brothers. You're carried by the Spirit into the mystery. Let's hold that pose just for another moment. Breathing yes, exhaling yes. Thank you. Thank you. Be seated, please. Well, there's one more breath and one more threshold. So we've crossed the threshold of blessing. We know we're worthy of the journey. I love you. I love you. We're in that flow. And we engage in our practices. We engage in events like this. We become vulnerable. We hear Shalan recite her beautiful poetry, and we hear the wisdom coming from our indigenous elder, right, in this practice field. And we come to the point where we don't know what to do with it all. And so we just say yes. And we experience the ecstasy of mystery, the ecstasis, where we literally are standing outside of our egoic self, giving witness to our divine self. we experience that ecstasy. But here's the thing. You can't hold on to it. What we're experiencing here, in this liminal place, this threshold place with the energy of this thin place, it cannot be held on to because it inherently has a generating force that propels us into the context of our lives with gifts to share. We do this work, brothers, on behalf of the world. And there's an urgency. The world is calling to us. The world wants you to find your purpose in the context of your life. There's a poet whose name is Christian Wyman, who is a professor also at Yale Divinity School. Wrote a wonderful book called My Bright Abyss. My Bright Abyss. Here's a few sentences from this book. What is the relationship between contemplation, this, taking a long, loving look at the real, this ecstasis, and action? What is the relationship between contemplation and action? Here's Christian Wyman. A mystical experience, and by this I mean to include those experiences of spiritual release in transcendence, and transcendence in nature, in prayer, in art, etc., that are available to every single person who will prepare herself or himself for and accept them. If that does not simply result in action, its reality is confirmed only in action. Let me read it again. A mystical experience, and by this I mean to include those experiences of spiritual release and transcendence in nature, in prayer, in art, in counsel, that are available to every single person who will prepare himself for and accept them, does not simply result in action. Its reality is confirmed only within action. So, brothers, this is the inner tidal zone. We go back and forth across this threshold, experience the depth of a mystical experience where all of us invoke Hagia Sophia, wisdom and humility. I don't know. That's the mystical experience. I don't know. It propels us into the world. And so, brothers, the prayer breath at this is, here I am, send me. Here I am, send me. Breathe that prayer for a few seconds, brothers. Here I am. Send me. Here I am. Send me. Here I am. Send me. This is why I'm mostly drawn to the energy, the element of the wind, because it has the generating, pollinating force in it. So we do this work so we can be sent into the world. I want to turn to Shalane and Doug again. But first, Doug, actually. Sorry. Doug, we had a conversation earlier that I wonder if you could surface around appropriation and maybe how wind might generate something.
Good afternoon again. O great Spirit, whose breath gives life to all the world to live, hear me. I'm small and weak. I need your strength and guidance, not to be greater than my brother or my sister, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Teach me the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. So when life fades at the fading sunset, my spirit may come home without shame. That is a prayer that I always say weekly in my talking circles. In the talking circles, all these people come. We have a feather. And I explained it earlier. We have an eagle feather. And that feather goes around and it sucks everything out of you. And that feather used to be on an eagle. And it flew high above the earth. And it saw everything. They say the eagle is one of the Creator's many warriors on this earth. And the eagle has wisdom, strength, commitment. And it carries one of our values and virtues. And it uses the wind to go up and up and up. And we use the wind as well. And many things that we do in our life. We talk about sadness of ourselves. We get lonesome. But it's the wind, the nature of life that teaches you how to nourish yourself at that time of sadness, to love yourself, to give yourself credit for the things you have done in life. Not to punish yourself, but to believe in yourself and love yourself. The Maori people, when they introduce each other, they breathe each other's air. They're exchanging breath in that way. We talk about the threshold. The threshold also could be where when you make a prayer, they say your prayer is already answered, met, but you got to meet it the rest of the way. But you come to the threshold here, right before your prayer is answered. This is the hardest test because it's only inches to step over that threshold before everything is answered. But we stop there sometimes because we got doubt. Did they hear my prayer? All you got to do is step over the threshold. Accept that. And your prayers are answered. And we talk about appropriation. Appropriation is when you take something and take credit for something and claim it for yourself or practice it without acknowledging the teachers. So in order for us to practice rituals that we taught, is to give acknowledgement to the people that taught it. That ceremony, that ritual is there to help you and guide you, to make you a better person, a better father, a better teacher. See, these indigenous ways are for everybody, but we must respect, even me. If I take, so I'm a dancer. I'm a fancy dancer and fancy war dancer in my culture. But it comes from the Ponca people. So before I dance, I acknowledge them. I honor them. Thank you for this teaching, for letting me borrow your culture. So I acknowledge them. So when I say that I'm a fancy war dancer, it comes from the Ponca people, the Ponca nation. But I borrowed it for them. I'm using it because it gives me strength. It teaches me how to watch the horses run. Teaches me how the eagles fly, so I can use their movement in my dancing. The agility of the goat that walks and climbs the mountain, balance, I use that in my dancing. The eagle swooping down, the wind that flutters my feathers, gives me breath. So I acknowledge those. Eagle, thank you for giving me your guidance. The horses, thank you for teaching me to love myself, but giving me strength as I dance. I acknowledge them because I use their teachings in what I do in life. So when we use others' teachings, we acknowledge them. We give them credit. And appropriation goes out the window. As long as you give acknowledgement to where those teachings have come, and that you're there to borrow them and use them for your life in a good way, appropriation goes out the window. It's the respect that we give. Doc, yes?
Permission aspect to that as well. If we were to borrow something, you acknowledge where it came from, but is there also, like, I think this is the first time we've had an Indigenous elder at a awaken event or Solarize event. So it feels like it's a bit of a liminal space for us in terms of our own practices. So is there some kind of, it's a relationship, isn't it?
I've met some of you that talked about Sundance. Some of you here at Sundance, been at Sundance, have Sundanced. And that practice guides you in your life, however that is. Gives you strength because of what you go through. And the teachers that teach you as you go in there, they're giving you permission to use it. Otherwise, they wouldn't teach you. But it's your responsibility to give them credit and honor them as well.
So Doug, I want to turn again to you and to Chelan. We're going to send the men out to wander in nature. I mean, it's all nature. We're in nature now. But to wander the land. I wonder if you have any suggestions for them when we consider the element of wind. What prompts or suggestions might surface for you as the men go out into the land? Anything come?
Well, the first thing you probably feel is peace, serenity, acceptance right away, because you're part of it. And understanding these, the trees, you talked about the trees, the DNA between us and the trees, the breath between us and the trees, make you think. They say that you can sit by a tree, either touch it or sit by it, meditate or sleep, and the tree will talk to you. I always wonder, these trees, some of these trees, or maybe all of them, are connected. How far are they connected? How far do they go? How far do the roots go? I've seen roots bigger than trees, as like an iceberg. So accept that peace and serenity. That's for you. It's giving you that.
There we go. I'll just read a snippet of this poem. The outdoors isn't native land for man-made pressures. Worries don't know how to long sustain themselves in this territory. The forest is represented by the greatest diplomat, holy silence, who shows us something of our mortality and that there's nothing to fear of it. Do with that what you will.
Before we go out, Mike, do you have some words to share?
Hey guys. Immediately after this, the ritual team, please stay in here for just a little bit, a few instructions. A reminder that you can wander for the next 45 minutes. As soon as you are done, please come and get your dinner right away. And then you are free to take your dinner out and about because they're trying to cycle 400 people through that dining hall along with us. So You can stay in, but yeah, if some of you would find other places to sit, that would help them out. Or if you can eat fast. Immediately following dinner at 6:30 will be another council session. So you can return to your council circles in the pavilion. You're also free to move your circle further out if you'd rather find another place to sit at that time. And then after council circles at 7:30, we'll be back in here for a very special session with Joel Blunk. So that's all. One thing from Jonathan.
Brothers, thank you for your prayers and blessings and intentions that you offered on the prayer flags as you came in yesterday. There's a new set of flags downstairs. We have been guided through some wonderful wisdom today. I would love for you to consider, Terry reminded us like it's a good idea to stop slinging arrows at our own hearts. That it's a good idea to consent and meet that angel at the altar and let new things pass. So brothers, your invitation between now and tomorrow morning, and maybe that's when you're eating and finding another space to eat, but your invitation for the flags, for those prayers, is what beautiful, what wonderful thing have you not yet been able to say to yourself? What beautiful and wonderful thing have you not yet been able to say to yourself? But now is the time to say yes.